Hey everybody, this is chapter 4, section 4. Title is Graphing a Function Rule, starts on page 253. We've done a little bit of graphing so far in this chapter. So far they've given us ordered pairs and all we've had to do is graph those. Now they're going to give us a function rule. We have to turn that function rule into ordered pairs and then graph. So that's where we're headed today. Remember, a graph is a picture of all of the solutions of an equation. Usually we just talk about one or two solutions. A graph is all of the solutions that work for an equation. A table can be used to create a graph. The graph may also include solutions that don't appear in the table. We'll look at that in a second. For example, a table might have like x is 1, x is 2, x is 3. It wouldn't really have something like x is 1/2 or x is 0.6 or something like that. The steps to graphing a function rule. First of all, I want you to choose at least 5 values for x. Usually you need to have at least one positive and one negative number. The rest of them can be whatever you want, but at least one positive and one negative. Total of 5. We'll talk more about why you need 5 later on in the chapter. There's a couple ways that you can decide what to use when you pick your own values for x. If the equation has a fraction in it, you want to pick x values that are multiples of the denominator. Denominator is the bottom number of the fraction. If it has a fraction, pick x values that are multiples of the denominator. This means that you will always have whole numbers or integers for your answer. Okay, you won't have to graph any fractions. I know how annoying that can be. If the problem is a word problem, pick x values that make sense. For example, if I'm talking about dogs in my problem, I'm not going to use 3.5 because it doesn't make sense to have half of a dog. Okay? Only use numbers that make sense. Also, you usually want to use values for x that are close to 0. You don't want to use really big numbers because then your graphs will end up being really big. So you don't want to use like x equals 100 because then you have to make a graph that's 100 boxes tall or 100 boxes wide. Okay, so pick numbers that are as close to 0 as possible. You're going to take each of your x values, you're going to plug the x value into the equation, and when you get an answer, that's going to be your y value that goes with it. So that now you picked your own x's, you figure out the y's that go with each x. Make sure at this step you're careful with math, order of operations, things like negative signs and stuff like that also. Now that you have an x and a y, you can turn that x and y into an ordered pair. Okay? And after you have ordered pairs, you can graph the ordered pairs just like we did in sections 2 and 3. And in section 5, connect your points with a line. Okay, those are your steps when you're graphing a function rule. Let's see how that would work in a problem. Example 1a, graph y equals 2x minus 4. Okay, so first I need to pick some x values. There's a total of 5 x values there. At least one of them is negative, at least one of them is positive. Okay, and I picked numbers that were pretty close to 0. I only used one negative number because I don't like dealing with negative numbers. Okay, I like positive numbers better, so I used more positive numbers. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to take those x values and I'm going to plug them into my equation. So I take -1 and I plug it into my rule. So I substitute in -1 where x was. And then I do the math. 2 times -1 is -2. -2 minus 4 gives me an answer of -6. My answer then is my y value. So I plug in my x value. The answer that I get is my y. When I plug in 0, I get -4. When I plug in 1, I get -2. When I plug in 2, I get 0. Plug in 3, and I get 2. Okay? That's how I find my y values. Next, I can turn all of these into ordered pairs, and I'm going to graph. If x is -1, y is negative 6, so that's down here. If x is 0, y is negative 4, so there's 0, negative 4. X is 1, y is negative 2. X is 2, y is 0. X is 3, y is 2. Now, take a look at that equation that we started with. The last step is connect it with a line. Line goes all the way across. Okay. Now, did it make sense that I end up with stuff in a straight line? Take a look at my equation. Y equals 2x minus 4. Are there any exponents? No, there's no exponents, which means this is going to be linear. Okay? My rule looks like it's linear. My graph looks like it's linear, so they match.